Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we are continuing with our SiQ Cosplay series, where I'm basically showing you how to make a costume from start to finish, and we are continuing with part 2 of making of the Joker shirt. So let's jump right in. And if you haven't watched part 1, stop the video now and go watch that one first. Okay, so first things first, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set in the sleeves of the shirt. What I like to do is I like to take the sleeve piece and I like to pin from the under the armpit to the top of the shoulder. So I'll pin both outsides of the armpit, and then I will kind of work my way up to the center of the top of the shoulder, which is called easing in the sleeve. And we'll take you in for a closer look. And this pattern calls for a 5/8 inch seam allowance, but definitely check your own pattern, because if you're working with a different pattern, it might call for something different. But I'd say in general, I usually use either a 1/4 or 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on pretty much everything that I do. And just slow and steady and make sure that your fabric is not bunched up on the bottom part. And I am using the fine glass head pins and the ultra fine for projects like this. I've just found that it doesn't leave big holes in your fabric that you have to look at later. And you'll see from time to time I do run over these pins. I've just found in my personal experience in my shop that running over these pins with the sewing machine is really not bad, as long as I do it nice and slow. Sometimes when you're working with shifty fabric like this, it's okay too. Now you'll see that the sleeve has a little bit of puckering in it, but if you actually take your tailor's ham, you can go ahead and give it a good pressing and it'll look great. And I would have shown you serging the shirt closed, but my camera was not working. Story of my life. Okay, so I am going to show you right here what I did. And maybe someday I will have a camera person to help me out. So here what I did is I basically serged from the cuff of the sleeve up into the armpit and down the side of the shirt to basically close the shirt. And what I'm going to do is, it's quite literally like maybe 1/8 of an inch away from that serging edge. I'm actually just going to straight stitch all the way down the side of the shirt. One thing that I do have to tell you guys, a serger does not replace the job of a straight stitch sewing machine. It shouldn't in any garment, because you have to have that straight stitch to actually hold the garment together, and just serging it really doesn't, I mean, it does the job, but it doesn't hold up like it's supposed to. And you'll see that if you just rely on serging, your garment may fall apart a lot quicker. And it is a bad habit that the garment industry has got into, where they just serge the edge of something, and that's probably why your stuff falls apart really quick. Anyway, so here we're looking at a quick time lapse of hemming the bottom of the shirt. And I just did the double fold under, which it shows in the pattern. And we'll go ahead and press that later. And I'm going to go ahead and pull the shirt to the right side out, so you can see it's starting to shape up like a shirt should be. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, this is the part of making something that I kind of get like really giddy, because you can start to see like the actual final look of something coming together, which is amazing. And I am without a doubt a ding dong, because After this, that's where you would add the cuffs, but I actually put that in part 1 video, and I'm sorry. So here we are going to move on to the collar. No, we're not. We're running on to the front of the shirt. This long piece right here is actually going to be where the buttons and the buttonholes sit on the front of the shirt. So now we're going to grab one of our piece number 3, which is called the front band. And what you're going to see is the top of the band has this little point right here. And you can see when it's folded in half, you'll kind of see how it's supposed to look. What you're going to do is you're actually going to put the right side of the fabric against the back side of the fabric. So both of your right sides are facing up. And if I confused you, what I mean is the right sides of your fabric are both facing up right here. And you'll see what I mean just in a sec. And you're basically going to stitch from where that point is all the way down. And you'll see right here when I pause, the right side of that is facing up as well as the right side of the shirt facing up. I would say that putting this part of the shirt together as well as the collar are probably, well, and the placket on the sleeve was really hard until I figured it out. Oh, I totally forgot, you guys. My furry baby got out of bed. This is in the middle of the night. This is like probably like 3 o'clock in the morning when I was filming this. And this is my little 4-year-old Pa'u Zoto Zan, and we call her Pants for short because I used to call her Zanny Pants as a baby. Anyway, she got out of bed to come check on me. She's so sweet. Okay, so when we get to the end of sewing that, what you'll basically do is fold this edge over the same amount that you just sewed, and then you'll fold it over like this, and you'll take it to the ironing board and press it all the way down. So you'll see right here, I have basically pressed the band into place, and what this does is it finishes the edge of that fabric from the back side and the front side. Now you take the bottom of the band and you'll fold it right sides together, so we have the outside facing toward us, and we're going to straight stitch just parallel along the bottom of that, and I'll show you right here. We're just going to sew a straight stitch to the bottom, and that's going to encase the bottom of the band and the shirt. So basically when they made this pattern, when they designed the pattern, they've actually made it to where all the raw edges, except for like your side seams, unless you want to do like a French seam, are pretty much hidden. And then we'll go ahead and we'll just snip off the little excess and turn it to the right side very carefully and poke out our corners. And I am such a bad example. You actually want to use a point turner for this, but I've been sewing for so long that I just naturally reach for something that's got a point to it. I know I'm a bad influence. I'm sorry, you guys. So once we have that straightened out where we need it, we'll go ahead and we'll stick a pin in there to kind of hold it for us. And I'm actually not going to show you this in real time because this takes a little bit, but what I do is I put the front of the shirt down on a hard surface, but because I was filming, I kind of wanted you guys to see what I was doing. I did it on the front of my sewing machine where I basically take and I pin that edge closed, and you'll see that you want it to kind of cover the stitching from before, but you don't want it to go too far. And the reason why is when you top stitch right here, you want this top stitch when you close up this front band to cover the stitching on the inside of the band. And so I found that if you pin it really good before you sew it, it helps out so much. And then we're going to go ahead as it shows in the pattern, and we're going to top stitch, like I think it's about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way down. And when you're done, I just kind of like to true up that top edge with my scissors, and it's starting to look like a shirt. Okay, so now I'm doing what is called the stay stitch. I know the pattern called for the stay stitch earlier, but I don't like to do it until I'm getting ready to put the collar in, just because I would rather have one stay stitch over the whole collar than in pieces. Now, first things first is we're going to add the band. And you can see right here that you're going to add the band, it looks like, to the right side of the shirt. So we'll grab our pattern piece and the right side of the shirt, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to pin from the outsides toward the center again. So, but you do want part of this band to hang off the edge, and I want to say that I had it hanging out either 1/2 an inch or 5/8 of an inch away. Yeah, see right there. It's about 1/2 an inch. So we'll do the same thing to the other side. And look at them to compare and make sure that they're hanging out the same amount. And then I typically like to go in and pin about 1 inch away from there as well, and then continue up to the center. And then when I get to the center, I'll stop and I'll go to the other edge and then pin to the center as well. And the reason why I do that is because most collars you actually have to kind of ease them in. And then we're going to start sewing the collar in. And I think this one called for 5/8 of an inch as well. And you want to make sure that you're going and looking front to back so there's not any puckering. And I did find that I actually had to resew this twice, and the first part of the footage was kind of fuzzy, so unfortunately I did not add it in. But you can see here I'm just making some clips in the top part of the fabric to kind of, they're like relaxing clips. So it'll basically allow the fabric to stretch where I need it to. But I'm just making a snip that's maybe 1/4 of an inch into the fabric so it doesn't hit the 5/8 where you're sewing. And that will just kind of help ease that shirt or that collar onto the top of the shirt. And that's a huge tip. If you get to the point where you can't actually, where something's not stretching or moving the way you want it to, if you just put a couple of like relief snips into your fabric, like into the edge, it tremendously helps, especially with fabrics that don't stretch like this. And there's your band. And it's also the next day. I think I finished filming probably about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was so tired I just turned everything off and came back in the next day and turned everything back on. I'm so hardcore. Anyway, we are going to trim down the top of this collar because we don't need all that extra fabric in the collar. It just creates bulk, and that is not sexy in a finished piece. Trust me. So we'll go ahead and true up this edge and just kind of take a good look at it. So next thing in our little pattern instructions is to put both sides of the top part of the collar together and sew them together. And I'm going to grab my pattern instructions and show ya. So you'll see right here, you're going to, with right sides together, sew your pattern together, like the little boxy part, and before we add it onto the shirt. So you could go this way, where you go from one edge to the other edge, but I'm going to show you how I was shown when I was working for MGM. Yeah, I used to be a seamstress for MGM Grand, if you didn't catch that in my last video. What you do is you actually start from the center of the collar and you work your way out to the outside edges of the collar. And what that does is it makes your collar so it doesn't curl. And I don't know if you've sewn a few collars when they curl on you and it looks kind of funny and you can't get one side to lay down, it just wants to poke out. That's why. It's because you're making that straight stitch all the way down the whole side of the collar. But I found that, and actually was taught, that if you sew from the center of the collar out to the ends and then center out to the ends on both sides, that your collar will lay flat. And another thing for crisp edges, instead of just cutting straight, I like to cut up at an angle and then out at an angle. So instead of cutting straight across that edge, I'm doing more of like a curved kind of line around that edge. And it just reduces the bulk that you're putting in the point of that collar. So kind of come in at an angle and then out at an angle. So we're just snipping more than it would if you just cut straight across like they show you in the pattern. A lot of these things are trial and error too, so I mean, do what you do. So we'll go ahead and turn this right side out, and being a bad example again and using my scissors to poke my corners out. And back from the ironing board, you see that the collar is flat. There's no curvy curve. So next thing you want to do is you want to take your other band piece and you want to pin just the outsides together. So you'll match up your outside, and I usually put like 2 or 3 pins in each side, and you'll go ahead and match those up and pin them together. So then when you have that pinned together, you'll take your band, or I'm sorry, not your band, your collar, and you're going to find the center of the collar, because what we'll do is we'll slide that up in between there, but we want to make sure that we have the center of the band and the center of the collar identified. So we'll just put a pin in the center right here in the collar, and then we'll do the same thing with the band. Like I was saying before, a lot of this stuff seems really hard when you first do it, but after you've done it and you've been shown properly how to do it, these are actually really easy. I can actually put one of these shirts together. Let's see how many times I can say actually in one sentence. I could put one of these shirts together probably from start to finish in about 5 hours now. And that would be from fabric to finish. So what we'll do is we'll slide the collar of the shirt in between the 2 bands, and then we're going to pin. And like I said before, the same way we pinned before from the outside to the center, we're going to do that on here. And one thing that I have found is that for me, I'll go through and reposition my pins, and you can see right here where I bend the fabric over my fingers. What I'm doing is I'm shaping the collar so it lays like the same way that it would go around your neck. And I'm just kind of taking and moving my pins, like I'll pull my pin out and I'll kind of, I don't even know what you call that motion, just kind of like not really stretching out my fabric, but kind of bending it over my hand to where it feels kind of flat. And then you'll see on the, and I work from the left to the right, so you see on this end I have some excess coming out the end. I'm going to grab the other side of the fabric and we're going to top stitch. And you'll see why I did this in just a minute. So I will go as close to the edge of the front band of the shirt as I can when I'm doing my top stitching and come up around the corner. And I always like to back tack over the little edge of the collar that's poked out through there. And you'll see this fabric, how it kind of hugs this front of my sewing machine. You see how it's kind of curved and it kind of naturally falls down my machine. I did that on purpose. And I am going to run over a couple of these pins until it starts to bunch. You see where it's bunching and I'm pulling the pins out? That is still giving that curve that I need, but if you look right here, it took back most of that excess fabric that was hanging off the edge of this side of the collar. And that's why I do that. So we'll go ahead and clip our threads, and then you have all of this fabric on both sides of your collar that we're going to have to get rid of. And you can see right here, if I were to turn it in right side out, there would just be way too much bulk. So we are going to give it a little haircut, so to speak. So you could always use a pair of pinking shears and just pink as close to that edge as you could without actually snipping into your sewing lines. Which I would use this technique, but typically on the shirts I like there to be a little bit more meat, especially in that collar, because it'll help stand the collar up on its own. So I'm just going to trim off a little bit of that excess interfacing that's hanging out, and then I'm just going to make some relief cuts in here, and they're just little triangles. And you can see it just looks like a little wheel. I always have such descriptive ways of explaining things. So this part is completely optional, but this is my own extra little thing I like to do. I used to put my label in the yoke of the shirt like this, but now I actually put my label in the band. And if you're making a shirt like as a gift to someone and you wanted to add your own label, I would highly suggest putting it in the band. This does actually help the band stay up a little bit, like stand up better, especially if you're working with a silky fabric like this. And it also gives it that really professional look. So before we attach the other side of the band, we're just sewing this to the inside. So I'll find the center of the band and I'll place my label there. And I did not back tack, just as if you didn't notice, I do not back tack when I put my label in, because what I'll do is I will sew a box around the full label. I'll cut the threads long, and then I'll come onto the inside of the shirt with one of my sharper stilettos, and I'll pull both strings to the back. And then what I do is I tie a square knot, which is right over left and right in front of left. And there you have it. Your label is attached. So I should have gone to the ironing board, but I live life on the edge. If you haven't noticed by now throughout all of my tutorials, I know I'm a little insane, and I'm so thankful that you guys put up with me, but I don't know. I do things my own way. So I always use my sewing machine as kind of like my third hand. You'll see me put my foot down on part of the project because I use that to anchor as like my third hand, I guess you'd say. We're gonna basically turn under the edge, the raw edge of the collar, how do you call it, the band. We're gonna turn that edge under and we're gonna pin it all the way. And this band part is actually on the outside of the shirt, so you want to make sure that you are covering all of that stitching. And then when you get to the edge of the band where it's kind of weird, I just like to bend that in with my fingernail, and you can see that there's a little extra right here. If there's too much fabric in this corner, snip off just the tip of it. Just how I did there, and then we'll bend that back over and fold it in. And these don't have to look pretty on the inside, it's the outside that counts. So if you have to remove more fabric than I just did, then do it. And I'll use my little spiky stiletto to kind of push the tip of that fabric back up in there before I pin. And then we'll go ahead and do the same thing to the other side. I need more coffee. So then you're going to pin from the outside of the other side up to the center. And if you find yourself having to kind of go back through and reposition your pins, do not feel bad about it, because I do it quite frequently. And then we're going to go ahead and top stitch, and this is going to be a top stitch that is roughly about 5/8, that's way too much, 1/8 of an inch. Roughly about 1/8 of an inch away from that edge. You basically want to sew as close to that edge without going off of it. And part of the way through here, I will sew over some of the needles, just because those needles actually help hold everything in place. And like I said before, when you're working with fabric that's this shifty and slippery, having those needles in the fabric actually helps when you're sewing over it. So you just want to be careful when you're going over the top of the needle. And our back tack, and that's it, my friends. We are at the end. And then you'll definitely want to go to your ironing board and press your shirt after you take all your pins out. And congratulations, if you've made it this far with all of my rambling and you've successfully put a shirt together, I want to see, so send me some pictures. So last but not least, I went and I put out a bunch of white buttons that I had to choose from, and I picked through the ones that I wanted to use and the ones that I thought I might use for the vest, which is going to be our next video. And then I am back at my little delicate drop-in bobbin sewing machine, and we are getting along much better, if you were wondering. Change out the thread, and we're going to go ahead and put on our button foot. I actually really like this machine for buttonholes, because the buttonhole options, I think there's about 5 or 6 options, and this is what I'm doing right here is I'm taking a scrap piece of fabric and I'm testing out which buttonhole looks the best for this shirt. And I don't know, one of these I think was pulling at the fabric too much, and the other one just didn't look professional enough. but I decided to go with it anyway. And I'll show ya. Like the one on the left looked like it pulled at the threads too much. It looked kind of puckery. And then I was like, you know, we might as well try the last one. I didn't think it would look good enough, but then when I pulled it out and saw how flat it sat, it was like, holy crap, that looks perfect. So always test on a scrap fabric before you actually do it on your final piece, because you would hate to get to this part and screw it up. Which, trust me, I've been there, done that, learned hard. I think that's my motto in life. Learn the hard way and then do it the right way. Come on, raise a hands. Who else is like that? You know you are. I know you are. Anyway, okay, so this is pretty much the end of the build. I hope you guys had a lot of fun with this. And I hope you guys at least learned something new from watching me do the build on this shirt. It's definitely a lot of fun. There are a lot of trial and error stuff, but if you have any questions or comments, definitely leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel before you leave. Follow me on all other social media, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.